What is up, everyone? Chris Manning here from the Locked On Cavs podcast with my co-host, Evan Dammerel, talking about Evan Mobley's next steps and how he can level up in year two. Let's get into it. All right, the music you heard on the way in is from Astro Radio. The song is Factory Flame. Check them out on Spotify or Apple Music. And we want to thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Remember, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Manning, covering the Cavs and the NBA for places like Dime on Uprocks and SB Nation Fear the Sword. Evan is over at Facebook's Write Down Euclid primarily. We're going to dive into where Evan Mobley goes from here into year two and how he continues to level up and improve what he is. But Evan, we're going to start with the news that Kevin Love officially, and I think news we expected, did not win Sixth Man of the Year. Miami's Tyler Hero wins. Kevin Love finishes second. What's your reaction?
Not necessarily surprised. Like you said, it's news we kind of expected. I think if you want to break down like the advanced numbers and some of the analytics behind things, maybe you could make a more compelling argument for Kevin Love. But let's be frank, folks. Miami was the top team in the Eastern Conference. Tyler Hero was one of Miami's better scorers outside of Jimmy Butler. It's a pretty easy award to kind of just make it cut and dry here. And the Cavs go over on every single award this season. And we got a question about maybe Evan Mobley being snubbed for Rookie of the Year and being that being motivation. But I feel like the Cavs are the type of team who would use this as motivation. So I wonder how it goes for them going forward.
Yeah, also might make it into an NFT just digitalize that.
You're telling me you don't want an NFT of the Kevin Love Sixth Man of the Year trophy?
No, I don't. Notably, we also did see Kevin Love shout out Tyler Hero on Twitter, kind of congratulating Tyler for winning the award.
Well, after you're done shouting out Kevin Love, shouting out Tyler Hero, I want to shout out Kevin Love again.
You just do it now.
Oh, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and he does a lot of good in the mental health community, associating the stigma associated with it. So keep on keeping on, Kevin. Trophies are meaningless when you're doing stuff like that.
And look, in the basketball sense of it, him not winning this award does not change the fact that he had a remarkable season, that his return to form, return to effectiveness, return to actually playing basketball again.
It was his healthiest season since the 15-16 season, for context.
Yeah, the fact that he returned to health is where I'm going, is that this is a guy that actually got back to play basketball. He made an impact. And even if it wasn't the massive role, even if this is a guy that you saw the Cavs maybe shy away from using him when the season was on the line, we talked about that when we recapped that Atlanta game. His impact on the season was immense. They're not as good of a team without him. He was not maybe the A1, A2 driver of that success, but had a massive important year. Kevin Love deserves a lot of kudos. But Evan, we're going to talk about the other Evan, the guy who deserves a ton of kudos. And I want to start with his shooting, because I feel like we talked about this on the stats part of it, running through where he takes the shots, how they look, all of that stuff. I think the thing for me with him is very, very clearly, okay, this is a guy that if he improves, if his overall kind of look on how he's playing improves, all of that stuff, this is a guy that had, like, if he just gets to a place where you feel like he's taking that step forward, you feel like you're going to be in a very good spot with what he is and where he's going. And I think that is where I start with his improvement and where we're kind of looking at it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it can be tricky to really gauge where he can fully improve, but I think this is a good place to start.
I don't think it's tricky to gauge. I think it's sort of really clear about what he needs to to level.
We talked about this in, I guess yesterday's episode, that his offensive limitations were kind of overshadowed by his defensive impact and just the overall team success at times. But yeah, if he just gets a little more comfortable at the rim, like, it would be big for the Cavs. And I think a lot of it is indicative of maybe the offensive scheme, maybe some of it's to report Darius Garland. I'm not willing to completely condemn Evan Mobley over this. I think it's just the Cavs are asking him but really become more comfortable defensively and let the offense come on its own. And we saw it starting to maybe come together a little bit towards the end of the season. But I think just unfortunate injuries, whether it was the elbow injury or the ankle injury, just kind of threw a wrench in his development a little bit. And I also just think him having to go from playing the 4 to playing the 5 and defending some truly big men, and Andre Drummond, who I know, we joke on him and dunk on him a lot on this show, but he's a big son bitch. That Andre Drummond, Joel Embiid, is no slouch either. So having him to do that is just going to tax more on him defensively. But I think if you get him easier looks and maybe like I'm trying to think of how to say make it more efficient. I was trying to say it in a more educated way, but make it more efficient. His shot profile, like it's gonna obviously make it a lot easier for him, and maybe making him more comfortable as a shooter helps a lot. But I think you made a really smart point on yesterday's show where if you kind of look at Giannis's offensive plan to the Bucks this game against the Celtics, notwithstanding, because he's been pretty bad in Game 2 against Boston, but you kind of get him a similar like look to that, and maybe you find a map and a way to just say, okay, Mobley, this is where we're going to make you more comfortable. This is where we're going to make you more adaptive and more of a threat going forward.
Yeah, I don't think it's a condemnation of him that like we're saying there is room to improve. That's just the reality. Like Ed is just calling it like we see it as we're analyzing what is going on here. I think it is, you look at what he was and you look at what he did, and I think there is just sort of clear stuff on how he like here. I pulled up his shot chart from NBA.com. We're going to throw that up on YouTube and we'll run through it here. So you see a lot of red, which is a lot of below average. There is average, which is at the rim, in that area around the rim. If you go just among bigs, he was, I think, even a little higher in terms of that ranking, maybe a little more above average. But there's a lot of red, and some of this makes sense, right? You see some of the spots where Evan Mobley likes to work. If he's not, if he gets inside in those two areas around the rim, he's going to back a guy down. He's going to try to get some up. He doesn't have the strength to really do that. His most success last year in those spots was really when he acts quickly, gets off a little fader. All that stuff, some of that works. The other part of it is you see him. I think the middle of the floor is the area where I want to see how that kind of goes. The 3-point stuff, I'm not really willing to like. I know we talked about that clip from the other day. I know it's like it would mean a lot if he could add that 3-point shot. I'm not willing to go there until we kind of see it. I don't feel comfortable kind of like there's not a ton to say, I think, until we kind of see it to some degree and see him take them willingly and see that his game get pushed in that direction. I think you just see him finishing some of this. You see him find some spots around the rim where he can bang a little more, where he can be more efficient in those spots. Maybe like a 16, 18-foot jumper too. I think those are just little improvements, and if he makes those, he becomes such a more useful offensive player. And also, again, I think cutting out some of those long twos, I'm going to throw this up. Like, he makes some of those at, like, relatively okay clips, but it's like you don't want – and he doesn't take like a ton of them, but it's like you don't like.
You don't want to become reliant on that either.
No, and like it's just not a thing that I think as he gets stronger. I would suspect as he gets stronger, and is like maybe he just continues developing his offensive game. Those are the things that maybe just via comfort, maybe via just knowing what to do a little bit more. Those just kind of organically get kind of snipped off the end of what he's doing.
No, I agree. I think this is just kind of something I want to take away is just for maybe an improvement is just the increase in muscle mass. And again, we've said this a few times on the show before. We'll get to that.
We have a whole hashtag muscle watch segment coming up.
Oh, don't worry, brother. I'm ready for it. But if he does put on muscle, and I think it's safe to assume he's going to put on some weight muscle-wise this offseason heading into next season, a lot of the looks at the rim will become a lot easier, and I think that'll just open up things so much more for him because he's going to be looking at some different defensive looks next season. I think teams are going to kind of figure out maybe what his inefficiencies are and what his deficiencies are overall that just kind of make him lackluster on the floor at times offensively, and I think he is a smart enough and adaptable enough player to learn that, like, maybe, okay, I need to, like, round out my repertoire a little bit. So heading into my second year, it's not as much of a flop. It's more of just me building upon my really strong foundation into next season.
Let me ask you this before we go into break. What do you feel like Evan Mobley has like a move that you feel like is his move right now? That if you're saying he has a thing that when he needs to try to create something that he has a thing he goes to, does anything pop in your mind when I say that?
Well, it's a little tricky, but I know him and Allen have been kind of worked on a little bit at times. But if Mobley's in the high post, he kicks it to a cutting Allen or Okoro. I think him as a passer at the elbow.
I specifically mean him as a scorer.
As a scorer?
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. I don't think he necessarily has a bag right now. I think he's still kind of learning as he goes. He looks like a newborn deer at times on offense out there where he looks a little timid, he looks a little meek, and I think if he gets a little more comfortable scoring in isolation, and like you said, maybe if he makes some of those long twos, he becomes more comfortable scoring in isolation. He can kind of break people down in isolation. But for now, he's just so reliant on Garland or Rubio at times or Rondo at times just as a playmaker to facilitate for him that it's kind of tricky to say, like, okay, this is definitively Evan Mobley's move, unless you're ready to tell me I'm wrong on something.
No, I think the only thing that comes to mind is like he had some success with that like little kind of like one dribble like from like the middle of the floor, but I don't feel like that is something he was just like going to. I think it's almost like the post, like when they'd throw him the ball in the post and he would either go for the fadeaway or like quickly make like a little hook shot. I don't. It's nothing like particularly explosive. It's sort of
it's subtle.
Yeah,
it's very economical is a good way to put it. But I mean, utilizing him in cuts with Allen just being like, I just think that's fun to watch. Just watching a big man throwing to another big man like that, and that's just neat to me. But we'll put a bit on that. I just think for now, like his offensive game is still pretty green and needs some robustness added to it, but economical, like you said, that move is a good way to put it.
He's I think it's pretty. I don't think he's a good offensive player yet, but I think we'll see if he is one in year two. But
he's slightly below solid, I'd say.
He's like adequate for like a rookie, but his defense is like all world, and his offense is like very much still coming on. All right, after the break, we're gonna get into him as him in the center of the floor, him as an offensive pressure release, and how maybe some of what we saw this year can be built upon as we go forward with Evan Mobley. But first, gonna tell everyone about Built Bar. Built Bar are the best tasting protein bars out there. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, the puffs included. And they have a ton of great flavors. They have coconut, mint brownie, coconut almond, cookies and cream, blueberry muffin, and a whole bunch more. They have new flavors coming out all the time. And if they think a flavor might be good, they're going to make it. It's going to be delicious, and it's going to be good for you. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, and then figure out how to make it healthy. And look, I don't know how they do it, but they pull it off literally every single time. And go check out their macro charts. You'll be blown away. These are high in protein, low calorie, high fiber, low in carbs. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Again, the promo code is LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, back here on the Locked On Cavs podcast. I'm Chris, that's Evan. Thanks for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Now, make sure to go check out Locked On NBA Big Board. Host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leaf Thulin, giving fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft with mock drafts, player rankings, and of course, big boards. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Evan, I think Evan Mobley, as an offensive hub, is a guy that kind of works as a release valve in the middle of the floor. I kind of want to see if the Cavs like lean into that a little more next year as a way to get Garland off ball, as a way to get perhaps Colin Sexton, Karis LeVert operating off ball as cutters, as a way to, as you mentioned, to get Jared Allen lobs and feeds a different way. Because it doesn't seem like Evan Mobley is necessarily going to be this like prototypical lead scoring option who attacks an ISO, brings the ball up the floor, all of that. He might do some of that sometimes. We may see him bring up the ball sometimes and run a set through him exclusively like that. But I also think he's a guy that if like you could, it seems like with his vision, which you don't see a ton of, like didn't average a ton of assists, but the little glimpses of it we saw, it feels like a guy that if his passing is highlighted and his passing is emphasized a little more, and it grows as he gets more comfortable in the league, that could just kind of feed into everyone else kind of, I think, having an easier time. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's a pretty spot on assessment. I think he does have the potential to maybe be a primary initiator, like you said, in some offensive sets, at least next season. Long term, I could see it being more of a foreseeable thing. I'd like the Cavs to use him as an offensive hub, especially at the top of the elbow. Just like you said, for Karis LeVert and Colin Sexton get easy looks as slashers, Isaac Okoro as well, especially these baseline cuts, as you I know are a big fan of. Jared Allen in the lob, but also like if Darius Garland is playing off ball as well, I think that's beneficial to him because Garland could get some easy looks on the perimeter if the Cavs maybe run some screens just to get Garland even more open, or run some floppy sets or things like that, just to kind of get him a little bit more open, just to get things some creative, more easy looks. There's a way for Cleveland to have a more conducive and more just aesthetically pleasing offense. And I think maybe not fully leaning into Mobley as a playmaker, but maybe encouraging it and letting it accentuate your offense more is a smart way of going about it. And I should mention Larry Markkinen and Kevin Love as well as 3-point shooters. Like, they could get easier looks from this.
Yep.
And even in time, like mentioning those two and Allen again, like if you want Mobley to initiate offenses in certain sets, just like let him be the ball handler in a pick and roll and see if it works. If it doesn't, obviously just yank that play. But if it does, why not try it? Because he does seem to have the vision. He does seem to have the handle of a guard. He was more in certain scenarios, but he had to play more or less the de facto point at Southern Cal. He has a familiarity of having to play point guard because he was playing with older AAU teams as a kid growing up. Like, explore this, see what you have here, because I think it can unlock things for you offensively.
Yeah, I think leaning into him in this regard would just be interesting. There's definitely some growing pains, right? Like,
yeah,
I even understand like his rookie season, considering. Look, I think like hopefully we're moving past this to a certain degree, but like the fact that like we've been in a pandemic and that has affected development for him, for like everyone the last couple, it just has. Like, I don't think we fully know the impact of it, but like there's something to that to me in terms of how, you know, preparing for his rookie year and all of that stuff. I think when you consider how compact the NBA season got, he had some injuries at inopportune times. You know, they brought in Rubio and they had Garland, and they kind of were like, okay, we're going to lean into this and it's going to help us improve. And this is going to be our identity. I think for that first year, that makes like a ton of sense of how that sort of happens. And I think it'll be interesting to see, because we mentioned this, you mentioned it the other day, but the Rob Mahoney piece, I went back and reread it before I did the outline for this episode. And one of the things that stood out was like, the coaches want Mobley to communicate more, and that's like something we should probably mention in the show, but it's like very hard for us to like fill a segment of like, hey, Evan Mobley needs to like communicate more on defense. I don't know how to make that like an interesting podcast segment. Even
you really
like,
can.
You can.
A soft-spoken rookie needs to speak more at 11.
Yes, and especially because he's seeing all this stuff that's gonna like, he can be like this quarterback in the defense in some ways, right? But one of the things JB said was it's not even him getting assists. And one of the things Bickerstaff said to Mahoney in this piece, and maybe said it at a presser, I don't know, probably did. But one of the quotes in there was like, basically, Mobley is not necessarily just going to pass guys to get them assists. He's going to make the pass that opens up something for someone else. He's going to make the read. It's like like a hockey assist is a way you could track it. It doesn't really need to be tracked, but it's something that like he's going to be a guy that can feed into the ecosystem and lose things up. And I think if they lean into that, if they turn that dial 5% more, 10% more, and his usage goes up, his assists go up from like 2.5 to like maybe like 4 to 4, something like that, that would be really interesting, especially because you would think, assuming health, assuming like what the roster is going to look like, you would think that the offensive personnel next year should be better than this year. And that maybe helps this a little bit too.
Yeah, I think that's not wrong. It's just, I wonder how comfortable Cleveland's coaching staff is. I mean, like, let's be frank, JB Bickerstaff is a coach who is very comfortable with kind of trying the unconventional, like i.e. starting Larry Markkinen or even Dean Wade at the 3 at times for them, and that only having to play a more conventional lineup just because injuries and whatnot necessitated it. But I feel like JB is one of those coaches who sometimes thinks outside of the box and is willing to try new things. And I talked about this with him in the past, back when Larry Nance and Kevin Love were on the roster, and you noticed it in the bubble with Jokic and Adebayo just being offensive hubs for their respective teams. And I wrote a story at this when I was in the Forbes, just asking like, hey, do you really think this is like the next offensive step is just running your offenses through your bigs? And he said, oh, yeah, I absolutely do. And I asked him how he planned on doing it, and he said he wanted to let Larry's playmaking be a feature. He wanted Kevin's playmaking to be a feature. If you have a guy who's like a bona fide, like, I hate this term, but unicorn, do you want to fully maximize that as well? And I don't know if Bickerstaff maybe wants to do that, because he's also a creature of habit, and he also is more prone to lean on his veterans instead, and maybe ask Garland to be the guy who just does it all on offense.
Yeah, I wonder if he just I'm watching test cases of this, because Mobley is like already just like a darn superstar. Like, this guy is already ridiculous. Like the
I
underlying
think he's knocking on the door for sure. I mean, like he's an all defensive caliber player as a rookie. He's definitely knocking on that superstar door.
And like if you look at like his passing numbers, so assist percentage just from cleaning the glass as a rookie, top 30% in bigs and assist percentage, above average in assist usage, and above average in turnover percentage. That's like a very high floor starting point for a guy that like he didn't get a ton of assists. Like 2.5 a game is not a lot, but like the numbers tell you like he already was doing this well in this small sample, and because of how much we saw JB ask of him on defense, how much we saw I think ask of him in terms of just the minutes he played, right? I mean, this was a guy that was playing 40 some minutes a night early in the season. I wonder if this is a thing where JB will do the thing where it's like, okay, yes, he's young. Yes, he's still going to grow. Yes, like we have guys that have been around longer, all that stuff. And we're going to lean on Darius and Colin and all that stuff because he has defensive responsibilities. But if there is a guy that I think JB might just like embrace to some degree, it's got to kind of be Evan Mobley.
Yeah,
right? Like,
I do.
It's not like he's going to be like, hey, Isaac Moore,
run
some spread pick and roll. Let's go. You know, like he's not going to do that, but he's might with Mobley.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And I think maybe only unfortunate thing about Mobley likely not playing in summer league is we probably don't get to see like that just kind of test it out a little bit in a more controlled environment before you do like in the preseason or something.
Really a mistake of last summer league not to have done that a little bit because I can't remember one possession.
No, I can't either. That's the thing. I think that would have popped so much in summer league for Evan Mobley's tape because the lack of point guard really made him seem so underwhelming. It seemed like he was so green on both ends, like just especially on offense, just defense solid, but offensively it just like was a work in progress. But I agree with that to an extent. Let me ask you this before we head into the next break. If the Cavs stick with playing big, do you think JB mixes things up and plays Evan Mobley as the 3 because he does have that switchability on defense and maybe he can be a little bit more of that offensive hub just because of just the positioning on the floor and maybe how the Cavs kind of run things?
I think it is already – the lines of that are already sort of blurred to the point where
positionless basketball.
Yeah, like I think they're a little blurry. I think Evan Mobley will just be Evan Mobley and like he will – like whatever Markkanen will just be like the spacer aside from him or whatever.
Unless the Cavs find like a tangible upgrade and then just put a normal 3 in place. So
I mean, yeah. I mean, look, I tweeted this. And like I've been watching. This isn't like a new take for me, but been thinking a lot about what like a Grant Williams type would look in place instead of like a Markkanen type. You know?
Yeah, we were talking about it a little bit before the show. I somewhat said E.J. Liddell from Ohio State could maybe make a little sense. I know it's a player the Cavs like, but also that's a rookie. Even if he is a junior in college, it's still a rookie. That's quite a big ask to say like, hey, we need you to perform like Grant Williams is right now for the Celtics.
Yeah, but I'm gonna if you want the real budget version of that, I'm just gonna throw this out now. We'll talk about him maybe perhaps as a free agent thing in like June. Budget version. Let's bring back Jeff Green. Huh?
I don't know if Uncle Jeff would be nice here, but would he want to leave a situation in Denver, or maybe he goes to like the Lakers or something if Phil Jackson allows it?
Oh God, go check out Locked On Lakers. Oh boy.
What a messy situation. Well, would you rather be in the Lakers situation or the Kings situation right now?
I would rather be running the Agua Caliente Clippers. After the break, we're going to get into Evan Mobley and Muscle Watch and the idea of him adding some muscle as he goes forward and sort of what maybe that looks like that's coming up after this. All right, back here on Locked On Cavs. Chris, that's Evan. Let's talk about muscle. Look, we don't know how much he's going to add. Or like if he adds, let's say he shows up at training camp or he does an interview at Summer League and says, hey, I've added 10 to 15 pounds. We don't know what that means until we see it, right? We don't know how his body is going to change when he adds the muscle, correct? And I think he has said he has added muscle like in the season. Like he looked bigger at the start of the season.
He's listed at 215. Yes. So you're saying he comes in 225 to 230. That's a lot of muscle. I was thinking 220-ish tops.
The cliche number of muscle the guys say they add is like 10 to 15. So I'm just that's why I put that in there. I have no idea. We have no idea. He's just talked about adding it, and it feels like it is coming. It'll be interesting to see like what he looks like with muscle, how his frame supports it, how it changes him. because I have this is like also one of those things that I think I have a hard time sort of extrapolating what it's going to look like or what I think it's going to look like, because it's just like I don't have like a number or a film or like film to look at or the games that I've watched and notes that I've taken to say, hey, Evan Mobley with muscle leads to XYZ. I think this could we just don't know like what it looks like, and I wonder like even how he would apply that added strength is sort of an interesting question.
No, I think it is interesting. I think it's a fair question. I know I've been using this as a point of reference for a while now that like his brother Isaiah is nothing the player that he is. I think Isaiah is actually going to declare for this year's draft, and he may not even be considered a second round prospect at this point. But hey, if you're the Cavs, maybe use that 58th overall pick on him if he happens to be available, just to one, because it's a big body you could put in there, and two, like
he's in like the 80s in some mocks, like in rankings. Like this might be a UDFA that you can
stash and hold on to and do by one of your franchise cornerstones. Little J.R. Smith service, baby.
Little legal tampering there, dare I say?
Just a little bit, but Isaiah is a little short. I think he's 2-3 inches shorter than Evan, but they have a
Taco Fall and Isaiah Mobley playing for Danger Road for the Cleveland Charge. Let's ride, baby.
That's right, baby. But I think he's a good point of reference for what maybe Mobley could really hit his apex at. Because I think Isaiah is 235. I want to say I don't have his exact like weight measurements in front of me, but it's always just a point of comparison I've heard. But if Mobley's able even to get like a little bit bulkier, because his brother's just bulkier than him, obviously, because he's older, but I think it's just going to make the world a difference. It's something I talked about at the top. It's something we talk about quite a bit all the time, that depending on the player Evan Mobley is physically next season, and it's safe to assume he will be a different player, obviously, because he knows what it takes to play 82 games in an NBA season. He knows physically what he has to go up against, especially if he's asked to play more fives, because the Cavs kind of switch things a lot more frequently and haphazardly on defense at times, or maybe like they force Allen onto a 4 and ask him to maybe switch on a stretchier 4, because Allen has shown a little bit of an ability as a switchier big at times as well, too.
Yeah. And that might indicate like some that might be like an indication of like this team had like that's a layer of scheme you're adding in, like that changes a little bit of what you're doing, and that would be sort of an interesting development considering how much of this year was based on sort of those two guys and kind of not specific and not rigid but sort of specific roles.
No, and that's the thing where it also can kind of change the trajectory of their free agency planning as well, because you and I were kind of going back and forth on this. We're going to talk about it a little bit on Friday's show, I believe, where we rank our priorities in terms of just like the draft and the offseason in general. Like backup big is going to be a big thing for the Cavs, because your backup big at times was either Ed Davis or Taco Fall, or Ed Davis and Moses Brown, because if Jared Allen went down with injury, you're thrusting Evan Mobley in as the starting 5. But if Mobley is just a little bit bigger and a little bit more physically capable of handling like some of the true bruisers in the league, and I'm not even just saying Embiid or Drummond as my examples before, but like you look at Brook Lopez or even Giannis, who is a force, obviously. It makes things a little bit easier for the Cavs. I think it makes their flexibility roster-wise and financially a little bit more functional, a little bit more tenable as well, and allows you to get more creative with some of your free agency additions. And I think it just unlocks a lot of things for the Cavs on and off the court in that regard too. Like it's something I've gone back and forth a lot, but I think his biggest priority this offseason, maybe other than rounding out his offensive game and quote unquote finding something in his bag a little bit that he can reliably go to, is adding some actual like tangible lean muscle to his body, where he doesn't like sacrifice a lot of the athleticism and the mobility he has, but gains some cojones and on defense a little bit, so that he can maybe take this elite skill set he has to an even higher level.
The strength also probably helps him in the post a little bit too, and if he's going to get post-up opportunities, if he's going to need to establish position at the elbow, if there's going to be things where he's going to need to be physically imposing himself on 4s and 5s, like that is gonna be an asset to him. And like literally, like it might be lower body strength is almost going to be like the biggest part of this. Like, does his foundation allow him to muscle guys from the bottom up, right? Like that is kind of the thing I look at is like, okay, if he's in the post, can he use his leg strength, use his back, and just kind of literally kind of bump guys? But can he, not only use his long arms and everything, but to really like establish strong position at the elbow? So I'm wondering if you said, oh my gosh, because you just saw the Dylan Brooks thing.
No, not the Dylan Brooks thing. I was more so looking at what Anthony Davis was kind of at his rookie season versus what he's at now. And he came in the league at 220. He's now at 254, 10% body fat. Like that's. I don't think he's gonna Mobley have that kind of growth. But like we were talking about, like maybe physical comps. Davis has a similar body type to Mobley. If he was able to put on that much muscle while maintaining like that low of a body fat percentage, like that'd be absolutely insane. Like that's the Giannis workout plan almost.
Yeah, and then there's also you also want. I think part of what makes Mobley so encouraging, it makes him so, I think, promising, is that he's fluid. So like, how does
you don't want to sacrifice that fluidity for the sake of muscle mass.
Yeah, like those we've talked a little bit about the Euro steps he can hit, where he's like just kind of squeezing in between guys because his legs are so long and he's got really good balance. If that's a thing, like if some of that is diminished when he adds muscle, that is notable. And like, does that make him kind of more of a jump shooter in certain instances? Like how does that affect him will be sort of interesting. Muscle also probably, and muscle and just overall conditioning probably helps just him like kind of survive an 82 game season as well, because like I am sure I know he's already back in the gym.
I mean granted, muscle doesn't help with freak elbow sprains and ankle sprains, but COVID.
I am sure that if you asked Evan Mobley and put true serum into him right now, like he's probably like still probably tired for the regular season.
Oh, like, for sure.
That 82 game season, the first. Anytime I've ever talked to players about this and talked to like teams about this and how they approach this, it's like the first time guys go through that, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, my favorite soundbite still is Evan Mobley saying the rookie wall is just a state of mind. He doesn't believe in it. And then immediately after, JB Bickerstaff said, and Kevin Love are both like, dude, no, it is such a real thing. Like, you get tired. It's natural.
Kevin Love's like, it's okay to be tired. Like, those guys have been around and like know what's up. And Mobley is like this 20-year-old kid who's like just kind of trying. Robot. Yeah, it was just going through it, and it's just like, Kevin's like, dude, you're gonna be tired. I mean, I can't even imagine like how your body, you go through all of that for the first time, and like just the fact that he's like
29 years old, and I ran 3 miles continuously today, and I was dead afterwards, and I can't even imagine the mileage an NBA player puts on in a regular night times 82 if they play all 82 games.
Yeah, I mean, like he played like almost 2,400 minutes. He played 2,322 minutes as a rookie in 69 games. That's a lot of minutes. Nice. That's a lot of minutes. Evan Mobley did a lot, and like I think like his ability to navigate that in year 2 will probably be improved. Do
you think locking him in a room with Steven Adams all summer long to work out's the right call? Just getting absolutely banged on by like a true like monolith of a human being.
Steven Adams does work out where he works out, interestingly.
No, that's what I'm saying is like right after Mobley was drafted by the Cavs, he was working out, I believe, in Memphis or somewhere near Memphis.
No. So it's I believe it's in LA because his trainer is a Wasserman affiliated trainer, and like Jalen Suggs worked out with him. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander works out there. It's like a lot of guys that are Wasserman clients work out with this guy. It's Spencer Dinwiddie works out there.
I'm thinking of a different workout then, but no, Steven Adams is like bodying Evan Mobley in a Memphis high school gym.
Oh,
he might have been working out in Los Angeles as well.
I think that might have been just in LA, but because it would be very weird if.
All right, you have a Mobley workout plan. You lock him in a room with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Steven Adams, and what comes out
also just like
will be a freak.
Also, just like
defensively,
3 weeks lifting with a Big Ten football program. Like, can he spend 3 weeks in Columbus and just like lift?
Well, I mean, he'll be down there probably more likely than Jim Renacci or Josh Mandel. Hey, I ended it on a high note.
All right, I gotta get out of here.
Cheers.
We're gonna be back on Thursday with a mailbag, all about Evan Mobley. That'll be a ton of fun. Friday, we're gonna do drafts. We're gonna unpack some different draft needs for the Cavs and then rank them in terms of how we would feel about them. So if you have some, and we mentioned the process as well, but last call for questions for Evan Mobley, lockedOnCavs@gmail.com, at LockedOnCavs on Twitter. And then again, the draft stuff.
Send them to Marissa McNeese on Twitter as well, so she's prepared.
Evan,
her handle is Marissa NM.
Evan, there's also this thing that I make called an outline that I put this stuff in. So
I know, but maybe she'll get some questions that are like she'll want to field on us, like just surprise us. Because I already made it clear in the rules that she just can't say Cade Cunningham was robbed. Next question.
Okay, everyone, be well, stay hydrated,
well.
Take care of yourself. Things are weird, and let's leave it at that. Peace.